And there are several grants also that come from the Office of Refugee Resettlement for mostly economic self-sufficiency of refugees. So it's mostly targeted toward employment services, case management, some of it for English language training to supplement what the adult English language network in the state provides. Um, uh, some set aside funding, limited, but still it goes a long way for refugee, it's called Refugee School Impact for the schools that have the largest number of refugee children. Right now, we also have funding for elderly refugees, older refugees, which is the right term, which is actually a wonderful program. But I do believe it's coming to an end because we're not getting older refugees resettled much more. It's kind of population has been resettled. So this is the scope. It's a very rough description of what the state contribution is. Of course, all the refugees, what is important to remember is that they're eligible for all the benefits that Vermonters are eligible for. So I don't know if ECDC has that in their presentation in the next point, but they are registered, they help with registration for TANF, for example, for our Reach Up program, for Tree Square Vermont, for WIC if they're eligible. All the services, basically, they get cash and assistance if they're not eligible for TANF, but this is very time limited. So everything is really, from our perspective, which is the OR perspective, we have to look at economic self-sufficiency as soon as possible. So this is, maybe we won't discuss this today, but in the future, if you do get a program, I'm sure that some volunteers and some community stakeholders will criticize that, because sometimes people don't have the time to learn English and they have to accept the first job that is offered to them. But that's the way the program is built right now at the national level. So I want to, thank everyone for coming today. And I think, it will be really important to hear from you what you think is your capacity in terms of numbers and in terms of service provision of services, but also what you think are your challenges. I know that in Chittenden County, I can tell you that this next year, the USCRI will propose to go from 26 refugees this year to 300 next year. So this is a big jump, which is why they're focusing on Chittenden County. And that the major issue that we will have, and they know it, we all know it, is housing. There's not enough of them. It's too expensive for the salary that, the income that the refugees can generate. And it's not large enough very often for the type of families that are going to be resettled there. So this is something we'll need to look at the state level also and see what we can do. But, housing is housing. It's not like we can change the situation overnight. But this is definitely something that is really important, because people need a place to live, be safe in, before they can look at finding a job and learn English and integrate. But I think this is really exciting time. At the state level, at the national level, everyone is supportive of the program. This is a wonderful program, and it brings as much, I think, to the community as to the refugees. I've heard that number of times, and I know it economically, socially, they bring such richness to the environment. Your kids go to school with people from around the world. They learn how to interact and become worldly in our interconnected world. I mean, I can't say enough about it. But at the same time, it's a humanitarian program, and people need help at the beginning. They need a lot of support, and I think we need to remember that. People are resilient, but it's so much to learn and so much to absorb in the first year or two, or even longer, that they need a supportive community. So thank you very much.
Great, thank you so much, Denise. If you are as overwhelmed as we are about learning all of this information about refugee resettlement process, again, you're not alone. Next, I'm going to introduce our partners at ECDC, and they will explain in more detail what it really looks like on the ground. But I just do want to remind folks that we are well on our way to developing the networks and systems that, Chittenden County have really built, the RISPnet, this service provider network. That's what a lot of the Working Communities group has been working towards, and how the partnerships we've been building, we're modeling them after best practices we've seen in other refugee resettlement communities. And so there might seem like a million different players, and I think there are, but I'm just so excited that we're all here now and starting that first step, and just reminding folks this is the first step and first group meeting of probably many. And so we're excited for that. And without further ado, I would like to introduce Dr. Tsehaye Tefera from ECDC. He's the president and founder of the Ethiopian Community Development Council. Thank you so much, Tsehaye, for being here and for exploring this partnership with us.
Thank you, Alex. Can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, I can hear you.
Good.
Yeah.
Well, I want to thank both Adam and Alex for working so hard to welcome us and to make this a reality. I also want to recognize the effort of the State Refugee Coordinator, Denise. She has been wonderful. I want really to thank all of you for coming to this meeting. This is going to be an exciting time for all of us. As you may know, the last 4 years have been very tough and challenging for many, many refugees, not only here in the States, but also around the world. We hope the coming 4 years are going to be welcoming times for refugees that have been stranded in different parts of the world. I want to give you a very brief history of ECDC. ECDC, the long name is Ethiopian Community Development Council. We began in 1983 when we looked around at who was coming and who was resettling. We recognized that the voice of the refugee community was not represented in the resettlement world. So ECDC decided to organize itself as a community-based organization and have a seat at the table in order to bring the refugee perspective. We like and we thank all the other national volunteer agencies who were resettling refugees, but they were talking about us on our behalf. And we said, well, maybe, it is time that we also bring our own perspective. So ECDC from day one has basically said the community needs to be involved in order to have a successful resettlement. Policies are formulated by other people, and we want to have a say in what policy is being formulated on our behalf. So when we became a national resettlement agency in 1991, what we brought to the table is, if you look at all the other agencies, they work with the established communities in the various cities and so on. So we said, okay, there is a gap that needs to be filled, and that is refugees are refugees for a few years, but there is a time when they have to be really an integral part of the community where they live. they have left their homes to really be part of the members of their new community. And one way of doing that is by involving them in the works that others are doing. So deliberately and strategically, what we have done is, wherever we have started, we will seek refugee or immigrant community-based organizations and bring them to be a resettlement agency, so that they will also serve as a model to their own communities, that this is a society, a country that encourages people's participation, whether it is in civil engagement and other. So the establishment of these community-based organizations is critical, that they serve as a role model for the rest of their community members. So that's the approach we do. So if you see most of our affiliates in the various, we have now about 15, 16, many of them are either organizations established by single ethnic groups or by multicultural groups. In places where we have not found an established community organization, then we have opened our own branch offices. We have now, a branch office in Denver that's over 17 years. We have another branch office in Las Vegas, over 15 years. We have one here in the Washington, D.C. area, actually two, one in Arlington, one in Silver Spring. These are our own branch offices. They are basically run and operated from the headquarters. So we are excited that this year we'll be adding 2 branch offices, because one in your city and the other one will be in Wausau, Wisconsin. And we are very, very excited that in both cities, the welcome that we have received from stakeholders is very, very positive, and that's very, very encouraging. We will be encouraging and also working, to ensure that, the refugee settlement program that we do is going to be integrated into the work of other stakeholders. We believe that refugee integration cannot happen in a vacuum. Refugee integration happens when the various stakeholders, whether community organizations, civic organizations, public officials, public offices, or faith-based organizations, and the business community coming together. So this year we are going to be starting a new initiative: community sponsorship, partner sponsorship, individual sponsorship, which Jessica is going to talk about it more later on. I am going to stop here. I will ask my colleagues basically to go over the various programs that we offer. But I am very, very excited and look forward when the COVID is gone, most probably soon. I will be coming to Vermont and meet each one of you. I really look forward to do that. I noticed, we have 2 state representatives, John Cannon and Michelle Boss. I want to thank you really for joining us. This is very exciting because I have been, in many states and so on, where the refugee program is the only connection we have with government is through the state refugee coordinator. Here it seems there is a broader interest, broader support from the community, and that's very, very encouraging. So I will turn to Alex to go to the next slides with, I think next one is
Morning, everyone. This is Rebecca Haile-Mescal. I'm a Senior Program Officer at ECDC. I am going to present to you basic information on what refugees are, who refugees are, and what the program is. As defined by the United States, we had a picture here. I don't know if it's has to do, but I'll continue my presentation. We had different phases of refugees that are coming from around the world. As defined by the United States law, a refugee is someone who is located outside of the United States, is a special humanitarian concern to the United States that demonstrates he or she was persecuted or fears persecution due to race, religion, nationality, political opinion, or a membership in a particular social group. It is someone who is not firmly resettled in another country and is otherwise admissible to the United States. Next slide. Resettlement involves the process of relocating a refugee from a country of first asylum to another country. If a refugee is transferred, that means that the country that is a refugee is resettling has agreed to admit the refugee and ultimately grants he or she a permanent resident. How the process goes is referred to the United States Refugee Admission Program, generally by the United Nations High Commission for Refugees, or can apply directly if they meet specific requirements. Once the United States Refugee Admission Program has received a referral, the determination begins and may lead to a denial of admission or ultimately resettlement. This process takes very long. Refugees undergo a strict vetting process before being admitted to the United States. Next slide. Refugee admissions process as it exists today was designed to assist in the resettlement of those individuals who meet the definition of a refugee as determined by international law. United States Refugee Admission Program comprises of the Bureau of Population, Refugee and Migration of U.S. Department of State, U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Service of the U.S. Department of Homeland Security, the Office of Refugee Resettlement of the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, non-governmental or international organizations who operate resettlement and support centers around the world to funding from PRM, and non-governmental resettlement agencies with affiliated offices across the United States like ECDC. The goal of U.S. Refugee Resettlement Program is to help refugees achieve economic self-sufficiency through employment as soon as possible after their arrival to the U.S. This program is a 30 to 90-day program. As also Denise mentioned earlier, the Reception and Placement Program is the core program for resettling refugees in the United States. It's funded by the Bureau of Population, Refugee and Migration of the United States Department of State. It provides initial support over a period of 30 to 90 days to help refugees begin their new lives in the country. It's a public-private partnership. There are 9 resettlement agencies that have affiliate organization or field offices in communities across the US. These organizations or resettlement agencies are Church World Relief, Domestic Foreign Missionary Society, ECDC is one of them, HIAS, International Rescue Committee, Lutheran Immigration and Refugee Service, US Commission for Refugee and Immigrants, United States Conference of Catholic Bishops, and World Relief. With this, I'll pass my presentation to Aline, who will be presenting on core services that are provided by the RNP program.
I think she is muted.
It also looks like she was having some trouble connecting. Rebecca, I don't know if maybe you just want to run.
Yeah, I can continue presenting this part as well. So The RNP program it's a 30 to 90-day program, but it's a very intensive program that helps refugees integrate into their new communities. The case management, first, when refugees arrive, the affiliates do intake interview and develop a service plan with refugees, which also includes some budget trainings as well. And they also have to do 2 home visits that's required by PRM. There is a cultural orientation class that they have to take. This is it's a post-arrival, there is a pre-arrival cultural orientation that they have to take, but once they arrive in the United States, there are cultural orientation topics that I think it's over 9 or 10 topics that they have to cover with their the case manager, or there will be a cultural orientation provider in the sites. Due to COVID now, this has become virtual, but the affiliates make sure that it is interactive and all adults in the household participate in the cultural orientation. They also assist with accessing health services. It includes helping refugees get health screening at the initial stage of their arrival within 30 days. And also that they ensure that they get their immunization. And also if they have health issues that they need to follow up, affiliates also help out with taking them or providing them with information that they need for their health follow-up. They also help in enrolling them with benefit applications. Also, they will take them to get their social security card, to get SNAP or any other like WIC, Denise has mentioned earlier, and that's done by the affiliates. Also, they will help in enrolling them in ongoing services such as English language, employment services, school enrollment for children. These are done within the first 30 days. And also if they are eligible for registration with selective services, that's also one thing that they have to do. They will have to complete the AR11 form that is done also by the help of the refugee case manager or resettlement manager in the affiliate sites. So this is in a nutshell what the core services are. Thank you.
Hi, good morning. My name is Jessica Chapman. I'm the Director of Community Engagement at ECDC. I'm from Thetford, Vermont. My family still lives there, so I'm particularly excited to be involved in this outreach and potential expansion to Brattleboro. As Denise and Rebecca have just been talking about, the resettlement and placement program itself is a short period. 30 to 90 days is not a long time to have someone integrate. And so the process of integration is actually a much longer process in itself that really does require the community's buy-in and support and capacity, which is why we're all here today. Key things that we have to take into account as we think about this integration process are the local systems and how they're prepared to meet the ongoing needs of these families that are resettled in a community. Of course, there needs to be a variety of employment opportunities, affordable housing, and broad community participation and dialogue so that families are welcomed and become active members of their new communities. One way that ECDC is focused on helping this process of integration is through community co-sponsorship. Co-sponsorship is done through groups of individuals who are paired with an individual or a family and help to provide the core RNP services that Rebecca just outlined for the first 90 days when a family or an individual arrives, and then for support after that for an additional 90 days. And we're particularly interested in this co-sponsorship model because we think, we feel and see that it helps families, again, beyond the first 90 days where the focus is on getting enrolled in school, accessing social services, but the process of integration itself really happens after those 90 days. And that's where having individuals or families paired with these groups, we believe strongly helps them integrate into the community. And so when we're looking at new communities to expand our work to, we're very interested in learning about the community's capacity to host and organize themselves in these co-sponsorship groups, of course, with support and training from ECDC, but to really be involved in providing those core R&P services to newcomers. So we'll discuss this a bit more in each of the breakout sessions, which will happen shortly. In the sessions, which we will break out into after this, we're really interested, and these are some of the overarching questions that we're looking to explore in today's meeting and to learn from you about. But the first one has to do with, and I just have to move my here, the proposed number of arrivals, and what you think, we're curious to hear, is a capacity that Brattleboro can handle in terms of how many people could be resettled each year in the city. Denise mentioned earlier in Brattleboro this past year, it was, I think she said 26, and they're proposing 300. So one of the things to think about and that we'll be asking you to share is the capacity within all of your different work elements, how many refugees you see can be served in your community. We also need to take into account the varying characteristics of refugee populations. So ECDC resettles people from all around the world. We don't have a say in who's coming, of course. It depends on what's going on globally. And this means that they're varying characteristics. They are coming from different countries, have different ethnic backgrounds. The average family size varies. And of course, their education and language also varies. And again, this means that we have to have a clear understanding of the stakeholders in a community's ability to adequately receive and serve the projected number of arrivals, as well as consider the aspects of integration to support refugee participation in civic life. So we want to make sure that we're not just, setting someone in a place, giving them support for 30 to 90 days and then leaving them. Really, it has to be an ongoing process where the community is engaged and is supportive for a longer term process of integration. So these are things that we hope, and Alex will help us to break out into groups to discuss more specific questions with these overarching elements that we're really interested to learn about from you today as we prepare our proposal for including Brattleboro as a field office for FY22, which starts in October. So I'm going to hand it back over to Alex at this point.
Great, thank you so much. So we've heard a lot, and what we hope to do now is split folks into some predetermined groups based on what we think you're experts in. I'll reiterate that none of you need to be experts in refugee resettlement. You are all already experts in what we invited you here to do. And I think that's what's most important to remember. I do want to note and thank all of the legislators who have showed up, Rep. Gannon and Pajala and Boss Lund and Kornheiser. I think I saw Senator Balint come in as well. Your presence and support is just so important. And I think when we think of other states and how perhaps inaccessible they are to their legislators, I think this is just such a great example of you folks being here and how part of the community our representation is. And so thank you for that. And of course, our working communities partners, we have Wyndham Regional here and Southeast Vermont Transit and World Learning and our partners there. I'm trying to see whom else. And so really, I encourage all of our leaders and those of you who are all, again, experts in your field, that as we break into these groups, to really answer the questions based on what you think is best, because this is, again, the first conversation of many, and today we need honesty and all the information we need to prepare and do what we need to do to meet our community's needs. So thanks again for that. One request is for those who are on the phone, if you could let us know who you are we can put you in the appropriate breakout room. And for those on the computer, if you haven't yet put first and last name and maybe where you're from via organization, that would be helpful as well. Oh, and I see folks from CASP as well, and I cannot say enough that their leadership in our community around supporting immigrants is really where so much of this started. And without their leadership in modeling what we know is possible, we wouldn't be here today. So before we dive into our breakout groups, I just thought I'd mention that. Without further ado, I think we are ready. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Rep. Kornheiser. Both BDCC staff and ECDC staff will be in each breakout group. We'll post the questions specific to your group in the chat. We'll be taking notes. These will be recorded as well. So I think folks are starting to be put there. Hey.
Yeah, so I don't know.
Hi, this is
No, go
Tafine
ahead.
Dean from Representative Welch's office. Sorry, I'm on the phone. I was driving. I'm just getting onto the Zoom, so I'll be in person. My
No
apologies.
worries. Thank you so much. So you can put them in the community and civic leadership. This is Rep. Welch's.
What about Sarah?
I'm not sure. Sarah, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
Is there a specific group you'd like to be a part of to be put in to?
It's fine. I can be in any groups.
Okay. How about workforce and housing?
Fine.
Great.
Great. All right, I'm gonna head into my group.
Great. Thank you. Hello. So, Tafine, where would you like to go? We've got 3 different sessions. We've got health and education service providers.
Hi, sorry. I'll hang up on the phone. I'm Tafine Dean from Rep. Welch's office. I just was joined over the phone and now I've hung up. Now I'm wherever you think I should be.
Okay.
Wherever the other delegation folks are is perfect.
Okay. I'll put you in the community and civic leadership group because I think that's where a lot of our reps are. And I see someone from Leahy's office.
I'm sorry.
No worries. You should be all set.
the difference between those two communities.
Sahai, do you think you could address the origin question?
Well, the president determines every year, how many would be coming from what region. So Africa, the Middle East, Latin America, and Indochina, and so on. So in terms of who comes from where, it really depends on the pipeline. So for 2021, for example, according to the latest revised numbers, they were supposed to have 20,000 for this year, nationally. Out of that 20,000, almost close to 9,000 or so are supposed to be from Africa. That's a theoretical. Realistically, we have only 4 months left, and we don't think it's going to happen. So now in many places, for example, of the African countries where refugees are, there are problems. For example, in Ethiopia, we had a large number of Eritrean refugees in 4 camps, mainly in northern Ethiopia. Well, I'm sure you have heard, you have watched the news. There is war going on in northern Ethiopia now, because Eritrea has now been part of the invasion of northern Ethiopia. Out of the 4 refugee camps, 2 of them have already been destroyed. About 20,000 refugees have vanished. Nobody knows where they are. It is rumored, said that they may have been taken back. So the process of refugees from northern Ethiopia this year is unlikely to happen in the middle of the war, because immigration officers have to go to interview, visas have to be extended, and so on. So we don't know if that is going to be possible. Now, Sudan is another country where there are large number of refugees. But again, there is a conflict between Ethiopia and Sudan now. Whether immigration officers would feel safe to go and interview people, that's another question. So we could say, the same thing is going on in Kenya. Kenya has been hosting a number of refugees from different countries for generations, in fact, sometimes. And now the Kenyans are saying they are going to close some of the refugee camps. And now, if that is really implemented, then there is going to be a rush for the US to process refugees as quickly as possible. So to answer your question, basically, we don't know. It is, we learn as we go. And chances are that we may get refugees from different nationalities at the same time. Did I answer your question, Ms. Cornice?
Yes, thank you. I'm just thinking about our capacity, and I really want us to do this well and not for folks to arrive and feel deeply isolated from a sense of community and a sense of culture, in addition to thinking about what sort of language resources we would need to pull together and things like that. So thank you.
If I may add, if possible, what we will do is, see, we receive the bio of each refugee that's assigned to us ahead of time. So that's where we can play. As much as possible, we will match, people who have already community ties to a particular community. We'll give priority to those people to go to that area, to that location where there is some kind of a community tie, either friends or distant relatives and what have you. If not, then what we do is, if they are all free cases, meaning with no community tie, then we will make sure that we will place people who have same language, same cultural background, and so that there is going to be a community support within themselves. We will try to the best of our ability to do. By doing that, what we'll be doing is we are creating a small community from the same community that speaks the same language and so on. But in times when we have no control of who is coming and so on, we may not be able to do that. We just place people, hoping that they will be successful in that area.
One thing I will add is that I'm hoping, I'll jump to that room soon, that this is exactly the conversation that's being had in the education and also the workforce conversations, because SIT and World Learning has been such a strong partner. And I think if there are language gaps that we have as a community, they are confident that those can be filled through their networks who have a lot of experience specifically on language learning. So with that, I'm gonna hop out to that meeting and hopefully they're asking the same questions, but yeah, thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you, Alex. And thank you, Representative Kornheiser, for your question. Yeah.
I think that would be, depending on the individuals coming and what they need from us, we might need to rethink our staffing model. I know Burlington or Chittenden County has a specific public health nurse workforce for that, and we don't have that in Brattleboro, but that's not to say that we couldn't.
Thank you so much, Sue and Laura. Those are all really great points and great resources for the English language learning. You kind of touched on a little bit of the health insurance aspect. I would love to maybe expand on that a little bit more. Talk a little bit more about healthcare, health insurance, if any of our partners here are able to speak to that. Kate.
I can just speak to what asylum seekers deal with when they arrive, which is a very different legal status than refugees. So I would need some clarification on what, whether refugees are eligible for Medicaid. I imagine they might be, and asylum seekers are not, by and large, unless there are some special conditions. So we have recently had really, really good luck with Vermont Health Connect and being able to get people insured for a very low cost, despite, legal status or anything like that. So that's a good infrastructure that we have there, I think. We also have had really good luck with all of the fee reduction programs at the hospitals and local medical providers that have been very generous in supporting the folks we serve at a low cost.
Great, thank you, Kate.
It's my understanding from Denise, just in sort of getting brief, that refugees are eligible for Medicaid. So that would really be the entree to most of the services, healthcare services. We certainly have providers that accept Medicaid, and we have some providers that don't. So there certainly are particular health challenges around Medicaid, oral health being one. There is a Windham County Dental Center right here in Brattleboro that does accept Medicaid, but they're one of the few. And so I can't speak to I would imagine we want to give some providers that we know accept Medicaid a heads up around this at some point and see what their capacity is. And there is support through Vermont Health Connect and other, I believe even in the eligibility office, so the parallel to Amy's work is the state benefit eligibility, benefits specialists. So they can help people sort of navigate through, and then the Health Connect, through the Department of Vermont Health Access, can support folks in their Medicaid applications and such. So, but that certainly would be part of, I would imagine, part of the case management piece would be, really needing to help navigate through that Medicaid application. I don't know if there's an expedited process for refugees through, and that's something that Denise could speak to, when this refugee health staff person would be hired, that person I would imagine would be that point person for the population, but that person's not here yet, so.
Great, thank you. I would love to turn it over just a little bit to either Rebecca or Elise. Do you have any questions that would kind of help us guide a little bit more of what you're looking for and what some of our challenges or expectations might be?
Thank you everyone for your active participation in this. We really appreciate. I think most of the things raised have been already addressed. The mental health, language, adult learning, ESL, and Medicaid also, like you said, yes, they are eligible for most of the benefits that they should get. The only question I have is in terms of the language capacity. It will be also helpful to know what languages you have. I think it was mentioned that there is a language online teleservice or online service, but in person is no more. I think in most places because of COVID, that's no more applicable. But it will be very helpful for us to know what languages you have in place, or it can be later on by email, so that we do have a network of language providers. We'll be able to assess the need and come up with a strategy to address the issue of language if we have that. Thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca. Great. So I'm going to return to our questions here and see if there's anything that we may have missed. Is there anything that anyone thinks would be relevant to speak to about their organization, about some of the work that you've been doing to prepare for this this kind of work?
Well, around the language learning, I know how much work World Learning and SIT has put into just really envisioning what a mature, supportive community would look like around, welcoming more immigrants. And so I'm just excited to see, how leveraging that network. I guess there's probably at least 2 or 3 alumni, not only staff members of World Learning and SIT here in the room right now. That is a network I think we're really excited to tap into, in the expertise of language, not only people who speak other languages, but have expertise in teaching folks with, who are English language learners, but most importantly, how they do that with intercultural competency at its core. So I don't know if Leslie, you would want to say something. Sorry I came late. You may have already stolen the show, but.
Leslie, you're muted still.
I'm looking, Tim, I know Tim has also done refugee work as well. And there's so many people in the Brattleboro area who have devoted much of their lives to refugee resettlement and have worked in refugee camps. And so I think per capita, this area has a huge wealth of people to draw on in terms of who have that intercultural competence and who have a real passion and interest in seeing this happen and having their communities enriched by this process. So I think that's sort of, it may not come up in an organizational chart, but it's part of, I think, just what is part of being in Brattleboro, because World Learning is here and so many people that have been affiliated with World Learning have settled here. And I did want to mention too that Brattleboro does have a history of refugee resettlement. That the Laotian community came here, and there were 7 families that were resettled in Brattleboro from 1979 to the early 1980s. So we do have that, and some of those families have stayed, and perhaps it's not obvious because I think they have become really well integrated into the community and have made this their home. So, but I just wanted to put that out there because I think it is part of our history too, which I think is significant.
I could just add to that, Leslie, thank you. My name is Joel Connolly. I'm the Vice President for External Engagement and Advocacy at World Learning and SIT. For the non-alums in the group, we were founded in Putney originally in 1932, but we, in the 50s, trained the first wave of Peace Corps volunteers at our site in Brattleboro. That's our headquarters. And from 1979 to 96, worked with Save the Children to successfully relocate 250,000 refugees worldwide. So it's something that we care about. We're very fortunate that we have alums that are passionate about this, Tim included, and Alex. So it's great to be a part of this conversation to sort of get things going. I guess, Rebecca, just to add a little additional information, we do language instruction for 28 foreign languages. I'll get you the specifics on those languages, but we offer virtual language instruction as well as in person. As of more recently, and I don't know if I had a chance to mention this to Tim, but we're working to provide for K through 12 some virtual language instruction, especially in those school districts that are having more serious budget constraints. And unfortunately, language is oftentimes the first on the chopping block. So, yep.
It's excellent. Thank you. So one thing that isn't on our list of questions, but I thought, might be a nice insight or just something to think about is, the scales that we're all working at are pretty small in the region. There's a lot of, the energy is here. We have a lot of fantastic smaller organizations. And so one of the big challenges becomes like capacity, like what is the real capacity that, our partners can dedicate to this work. And so, really thinking about, how does what makes sense for you as an organization as far as like level of participation and resources that you think that you'd be able to commit. And then I know it's kind of a broad question, like right off the bat here in this first community consultation, but it's something to really think about as we're talking about sort of these broad strokes of what are the things we would like to do. So
I have a question. Is like, I don't know how to phrase this, but is I know Brattleboro is submitting an application, and then the amount of families that get resettled, is that based on what we're saying our capacity is, or is it kind of, I guess I'm just curious about how the amount of families or individuals is decided.
Alex, would you be able to, Alex or Rebecca, would either of you be able to speak to that?
I can address this question. So usually what happens is for the first year, a maximum number an affiliate can serve is 100 individuals, but based on what you all propose, we can come up with 75 or 50 or any number, even 25, but it's based on what capacity you will want us to have. So that's a maximum we can go, but we can go under 50 as well. Thanks, but 50 is a good number. I mean, going less than that will be very low.
And it isn't, the first of the year, 50 people show up and then you have to do it. It's, my understanding is no one is brought into the community until the housing is found for them. And a lot of these services are in place. So whatever the number is, it's not possible for someone to show up and not have a home because they wouldn't be located here regardless. So there are limiting factors. It's a cap, not a requirement. And so I think that's I know numbers and scale is always really scary for us here in small southern Vermont, but we put upper boundaries on that number, and then we see what we can do year one, and then that's what the information we do based on year two. So even if we all could say 75 is great and we're all wrong, that's okay too. That it's where this is the first of many conversations about what's really the best.
Yeah, just to add on what Alex said, and it's going to be throughout the year. So refugees are not going to show up at one time, but it will be like 5 cases for the first 5 months. And, it goes like that. So it's a cap for a year, but you might not see all of them.
Thank you, that's helpful.
I'm just so enthused by this conversation. I'm going to hop into one of the other rooms, but thanks to everyone. Keep it up. It's really great. Thank you.
Muslims' interest is not, they can't be dealt with, can't be paid. So how do we educate ourselves here? It just seems to be there's a whole readiness issue in the community for us to undertake while we're trying to help Elizabeth build housing and Randy develop bus routes and other people to find employment. There's just a general readiness issue.
Well, do you have a mosque in your community?
We do not. The closest mosque is 47 minutes door to door.
Okay. Well, that will be of concern too if we send you Muslim refugees. How are they going to get to the mosque? And I would say one thing, our Denver branch office, again, when they first started, the woman who was director spent a week at a workshop in Iowa and learned about something called First Families. And I think I've got the title a little screwed, but what they do is they would put out information about their refugee resettlement program and ask for volunteers. First Friends is what the program's called. Sorry, First Friends. And so once a week, they would have a potluck dinner at their office. And people who had signed up from the community to be volunteers, to at least find out about volunteering with the organization, and the refugees would be invited to this potluck dinner. Everybody would bring a dish. So the refugees would bring something that they had made and introduced to the American volunteers. And they would have about 10 tables that sat 8 people, and there could be anywhere from 40 to 60 people. And people would converse and get to know one another. And when everyone was done eating, the tables would be taken away and a large circle would be formed with just the chairs. And then people would go around and reintroduce themselves. And then some of the Americans would say, is there anything that any of you refugees need? The time I went, one of the families who was there said, I need a bike for my 5-year-old. Does anybody have a bike they could get? And somebody else spoke up, I do. I can give you a bike for your son. And so in the conversation, people would get to know each other and be willing to volunteer, to work with them, to be their first friend. And so the first friends would be there for 3 months. And what they would do is be available for a call or call the family once a week, see how they're doing, stop by, see if there's anything they need. On the weekends, they might take the family or the individual to a museum, to a park, show them downtown, introduce them to Denver, art museums. And some of those people really have been continued to be friends with the refugees for 10, 15, 20 years now. So it's a way of getting volunteers involved and learning about the whole program, contributing, and the refugees also participate and share their cultures, what they've experienced. I can give you another example. When we go to monitor at an affiliate, we do home visits, and they had arranged a home visit with an Iraqi family. And they were quite a ways out from downtown Denver. And they had prepared this fabulous luncheon meal for us, for me. And we were sitting there, and the father looked at me and he said, he said, this apartment is too expensive. I can't afford this. I have 3 kids and I can't afford it. You need to go to Congress and tell them to give us more money. And I said, well, that's a nice idea, but the program stipulates how much money everybody gets, and every single refugee gets the same amount of money across the board. It doesn't matter where you come from, what your nationality is, everybody gets the same amount. And he said, well, you still have to go up to Congress and talk to them about this. So they can be very participating and have concerns. They may not always express them well, but everybody needs help. And
one of the things, Chris, were you going to chime in on that? Because I think
just a quick, I guess it's a question. And I've got to hop off. It seemed to me like, I know with when I was working with the Vietnamese refugees in Mississippi, these were fishermen, Catholic Social Services was huge. That was they were from the Vung Tau province. That Catholicism was their religion. It seems to me, and maybe I'm wrong, but I guess the question is, to what extent is an established faith-based community going to be important, regardless of which refugees we bring in? Because we do not have a particularly strong faith-based. I mean, we've got churches, and I'm not diminishing that, but I'm just thinking relative to other parts of the country, we don't necessarily have big, robust faith-based communities that are, with I guess kind of deeper pockets. I'm thinking like, Southern Baptist Convention or Catholic Social Services, or and I don't know as much about Muslim organizations or Buddhist organizations or others. I'm just wondering to what extent that's a factor we should be thinking about.
Well, it's why I brought in Jeff Lewis, to put him on the spot. I mean, Jeff rallied a bunch of folks from the faith community here, but your point is well taken. I mean, that's something that Jeff and I have talked about a lot. So Jeff, I don't know if you want to speak to that specifically. And then I wonder if also maybe Chris or Sue Westow or Sue Fillion could speak just a little bit to the kind of mutual aid network and kind of what does exist that maybe can be leveraged.
I would speak just briefly. Chris has identified a key resource that needs to be created. He's absolutely right that we don't have the level of participation and institutional size here that you might find in Mississippi. I think in some of the congregations, there's good strength and talent and a great deal of desire that needs to be organized. It's not, at the moment, I would say, a particularly well-organized general community. Some individual congregations are. So that needs to be built along with many of the other resources that we're talking about. So I hope we can find congregations that see this as an opportunity, but Chris is absolutely right. I think this is a resource we need to focus on, because these folk will volunteer and are motivated by faith. I mean, so they bring some energy to the job.
Yeah. I mean, I think I've seen a lot of comment on how Vermont is the least religious state, but we are perhaps one of the most community-oriented ones. So I would say, instead of faith-based community organizations, in Vermont, we have a lot of community-based faith organizations.
Nice distinction, Alex.
Yeah, really. And so when you think about it that way, we have collections of people who are community-based, and often what they support and engage with in the community it has very little to do with what faith they practice and much more the role that faith has in community. And so that is something that, as someone with a Southern wife who both are pretty non-religious, the welcomeness we've found walking into the various places of worship in the community was both a shock to my wife, coming from the South in a good way. But I think, the welcomeness we felt superseded the religiosity of that. And that's what I think we'll be able to lean into a lot here.
I guess the question, Alex and others, is oftentimes with the faith, it's not necessarily the question I'm asking is not necessarily the welcomeness. It's also the other traditions, right? It's the food, it's the holidays, it's the culture, it's those other aspects. And so if we're bringing in refugees that themselves have a strong faith-based tradition, and they need those things to be able to resettle, are we able to provide that? And I'm sure we're not the first community to be looking at this. And I just put a question in the chat. I'm wondering if our interfaith collaborations, have they been effective in those kinds of situations? So Aline and others, I guess that's the question. And I'm not, I don't know that I'm just trying to figure out what is the typical role, so to make sure that transition works. Because I know one of the things that we've discussed as far as even just fairness and diversity training. I know when I took the partnership and fairness diversity training, one of the issues was people who even have different hair types. Can I get my hair cut without going, are certain foods and other things, are those things available? Because it does make a difference in those transitions. And that's what I'm just as far as community preparation, but also just for the well-being of the people who would be coming here, what works so that we don't bring people into a circumstance that where they would feel isolated. I know we could do it because, right, it's been done in Burlington, it's been done throughout Maine, it's been done in communities that, in a lot of different communities. I'm just trying to figure out what's specifics. And Jen and all you guys, maybe you've already done all this research and it. I'm just trying to figure out from
Yeah, I think what we lean on, we lean on CASP, because they are on the front line of sort of helping people navigate all that, but also SIT. And I think, not everybody from SIT was able to be here today, but we sort of have 3 great point people. And this is something that they've been doing for a long time, because they have been bringing people here for at least sort of a medium long term, but also have a lot of people who come and stayed. So I think that's a piece of it. But that's kind of a fuzzy answer, because what you're really asking is more of like a, it's like a transactional case management problem. Someone arrives, they need to be able to find, halal meat that is affordable and something maybe they can access without a vehicle, right? That right there is a problem I know we have, right? I know where to buy halal meat in the region, and I don't know how anyone could get there without a car, right? So those are very specific things we have to solve.
And I'll say, conversations around entrepreneurism, we are not excluding that component of our work because we know the role that immigrants play in our entrepreneurial ecosystem. And, we have a new business support specialist who comes from the Middle East. And so, should anyone want to open up a store or find a way to bring halal products or different hair products or all of these products and services, we are actually better prepared today than we were a year and a half ago, 2 years ago. Not only, to say, hey, Randy, can you get someone on a bus somewhere far away, but how can we bring these resources and develop them internally? Again, that's further down the road than what's those immediate needs, but the long-term sustainability of this effort absolutely relies on someone not driving 45 minutes for the kind of protein that they want or need.
Well, I think you do have challenges, but we all have challenges. And I think if you have welcoming communities, that's one of the most important things you can have. When you
Okay,
asked
Eileen.
about religion, are we going back to the other group?
We have a few more minutes.
I can say that Ethiopians tend to be quite religious. They're Orthodox, Ethiopian Orthodox. Muslims are. They like to be able to go to a mosque on Fridays. And some are Catholic, and other people, just like Americans, not everybody in America is all that religious, or that it's personal for them. So while all of those things would be nice to have in one community, your community doesn't have that, and it may never have that diversity for newcomers. But they can look forward to going to a larger city on a weekend and exploring what that city has. And they, again, somebody could drive them on a weekend to see some other city. Now, that may mean that they'll move, because when you see something that has everything that you want, you would tend to say, well, maybe I ought to go there instead of living here. But they may also say, no, I really like it here. The people have been good to me. They've helped me. I enjoy life here. There are so many advantages here. And so they would stay. But you don't know. People are people, whether they're a refugee or someone in your community.
Hi there. Can I ask who's on the phone?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Hi, this is Beth Owaite with Senator Sanders' office.
Oh, hi, Beth. I don't know if you are just joining, but we are about to bring everyone's in breakout groups right now.
Okay.
We're about to bring everyone back together. Yeah, if you have any questions in the 2 minutes, I don't know if you want to be put into a breakout group for the last minute or two, but.
No, I can just join the general session.
Great.
Once we get back together, yeah.
Yeah, it'll be just another minute or two.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome back, folks. Thanks to Casey. I didn't even need to shut down your group for you all to come back on time. Not a surprise there. Everyone else should be back in the next 30 seconds or so. And everyone's getting in their last few seconds. Guess it's good.
Our goal
Welcome back,
is,
everyone.
for the application purpose, we are asking for 75 refugees, but we will monitor that in collaboration with you all to see, what is the most practical and realistic number. So we will monitor this every quarter. Even though we are proposing 75, from 50 to 75, of course, it's a year-long process. And there are some months we will have more refugees. Other months there may not be any refugees resettled and so on. So I want to assure you that in collaboration with the community, we will be monitoring in terms of how many people we are going to be bringing in a given quarter. That's one thing. I also want to go back to the previous, having employers as a group taking the initiative to co-sponsor and so on is very, very helpful. Our goal is to make the refugees as self-sufficient as early as possible. And if we can show that that is happening quickly, I think it will really increase the the trust by the public to bring in more refugees and so on. One of the fears that people have in very communities is, well, there are no jobs, these people are going to be dependent on the public forever and so on. So if we can assure, that is not going to be the case, then, we'll be building confidence in the community about the whole refugee program. Thank you.
Great. I think most of us caught the end of that conversation, but I think it was the perfect part of the conversation for everyone to hear. I know that was a lot of the questions that we talked about in our individual groups. So thank you for that. And thanks to everyone. I spent a little time in all of the groups. And it's just so great seeing folks thinking really hard about what we can do and how we can support these individuals as a community. So what I think I'd like to do next is really to have folks either we can have ECDC staff members share what they heard in their groups, or we can have, if we have any brave individuals from these groups to share what they think the most exciting asset and opportunity that they discussed, or maybe something new, a new thing that they learned about our own community that is exciting for them. And then we'll say, what are maybe one or more of the obstacles that we know we'll need to work really hard together to address. I would love to hear that, from as many people who want to share. And so feel free to either raise your hand. Representative Sibilia, I see your hand.
Yeah, one of the pieces that we were talking about in our group was the possibility of having employers, and I think we just heard an expansion on that, form these support teams for folks coming in, and something that I'm interested in. We heard quite a bit about housing also in our group. across on the other side of Southern Vermont, we have seen some really innovative work happening from employers with housing. And, you know, I'm interested, I'm thinking about Southwestern Vermont Medical Center, which has purchased and improved homes for workers. And, you know, I'm just wondering about the possibility, given that we know that interest with employers here is high, in maybe looking at that model or supporting that type of effort here in helping to expand worker housing, this effort. So I think very exciting opportunity.
Great, thanks. Any other brave souls who want to offer up something that they learned, or something they're excited about, or something, an obstacle that you learned that you hadn't thought about that you think you're excited or able to help be a part of the solution towards?
Alex, it's Carmen.
Yes,
I was
please.
in the same group as Laura and others that are on this meeting now. And a lot of conversation in our group happened around what volunteering will look like and how to, it's, you know, the support systems that need to be in place for the host and what that would look like. And it was great to learn about the different models that are being discussed and already implemented in other places and that could be implemented here. So, and that I don't think our community will be short of volunteers. That's the message I walked away with. So.
And managing and organizing all of the volunteers is very easy, right, Carmen? No, I know, we know that is something we've already talked about is, wow, you know, there's a great example. Where's Tim from the school board? Tim reached out to us a while ago saying, is anyone thinking about this? And, you know, already we have people reaching out saying, how can we help? So managing volunteers is going to be harder than finding them. But I think that's definitely on our list. Thanks. Kate knows also. Anything else?
Alex, I think as Laura suggested, housing was one of the big issues, and as we try to make that determination, I think one of the big questions that our partners at ECDC are trying to ascertain is how many people can we welcome? And so for folks who've been thinking about this for a long time, one might hope that we have that answer. Well, we don't, and it is the housing issue. People do move here regularly. And do find it is a scarcity. It has the risk. I think this wasn't fully discussed in the group, but I think we went around the edges on it, which is the fact that something that is scarce that is then consumed by a perceived group could start to cause friction within the area. And so as a body who is really thinking about this and working on this, I think that's something we really have to address and get ahead of. You know, certainly within the welcoming communities, we've spoken about that at length. But that the risk of racism, overt racism, the who haves, who has not, is something that we really as a group have to start to name and address.
Yeah, you know, I think, thank you, Adam. I think with housing and all of these, whatever obstacles we face, I think the answer can never be choosing to exclude people from our communities. And we don't always understand that might be the choices we're making, but I think we can all agree that the solution is probably more housing, and not excluding refugees from our community. The timeline and how we do that and how quickly we can build housing for all that works is, again, something we are working exhaustively on. But really making it clear that communities never decide who is and is not welcome. And so how else can we look at these scarcities and support that? And yeah, thank you.
Alex, one thing that I thought was an interesting takeaway from our discussion was thinking about models. Maybe we could learn from the other communities that ECDC works with about models for clustering volunteer teams. And one idea, it kind of was spawned by a question from Laura, was that perhaps there are clusters of employees in one particular organization, and then the support for them could relate to the workplace. So that was one thing to ask ECDC if they have experience in that model. And we also were interested in conveying that we have a workable circles of support and accountability approach that has been going for years. I know I've been a participant in a COSA in the past, and our Community Justice Center would be an excellent partner with their experience in training and looking at this model for a different population, a refugee population. And just thinking about maybe melding different things that we already have to offer through volunteer support teams in this new setting.
Great. Yeah, thank you. I think one of our main overarching goals is not adding more meetings than we need to, because it's what makes our community strong. We meet often and frequently and collaborate excellently. So we are really going to lean into all of those groups that Diana, referred to, that we have to really do this work. And there was a question.
I'll jump in if I could. It's Elizabeth with the Wyndham and Windsor Housing Trust. So, we in our group, obviously, we talked a lot about housing, and I talked about what I saw as some of the challenges that are just around, language barriers and applications being really complicated and things like that. But one, I think, really positive thing at the Housing Trust, as it kind of dovetails with this initiative, is that we've been working on orienting towards equity issues now for the last 3 years. And we've got 2 board members that are foreign born on our board. One of them works for CASP right now, and we're about to we just actually at our annual meeting last week, just voted to bring on a new board member who's also a board member of CASP. So we're just really putting some intention into ensuring that housing availability is available for all residents. And I mean, it obviously already is, but doing it in a way that's intentional and welcoming and meeting the needs of all of our applicants. So I'm just super excited about this initiative and glad to be involved. One thing that I on our group, I just want to mention, you asked like what surprised you, and I think it was Sarah from, is it ECDC, talked about not worrying, because we sort of talked about the characteristics of a welcoming community and where could people go and buy halal meat or go to a mosque or get some of their very specific culturally based needs met. And so what Sarah said was, what's more important is jobs and housing and kind of a welcoming attitude and that first friends model, and that new arrivals will figure out some of these other details for themselves. Very, to not worry so much about that, because people have a lot of ingenuity, and that was nice to hear, because there are some gaps, I think, in terms of resources in the community. And she really encouraged us not to get so hung up on that and look at the bigger issues and focus our energies on those. So that was sort of a big takeaway for me and very affirming.
Yeah, Kate is spot on about, thank you. That's absolutely great, Elizabeth. And yeah, Kate in the chat mentions immigrants open businesses. They're also very successful entrepreneurs. And I know the BDCC, have been investing in all of these questions and answers also to ensure that those kinds of supports exist. Diana did ask a question that I think really dovetailed well into what Elizabeth said about how we'll be learning from ECDC. So Elizabeth mentioned First Friends, and Diana said what kinds of training or examples. If someone from ECDC could just explain something that I have learned recently, which is the incredible network of people who do this work, and the resources they bring both to the communities they're in, but also that they share openly and enthusiastically with anyone who's looking. Again, you know, I was cold calling these people, and the doors were always wide open and said, here's what you need to know, here's how to learn. And so, yeah, I would just love to hear from someone from ECDC about what kind of training or best practices that, you know, they bring with them, not just for their staff, but for the community.
Jessica, you want to take this?
Yeah, and I shared a bit about this in our breakout group, but what we're really excited about and have been investing both ECDC as well as private resources that we've managed to get is focusing on co-sponsorship as a way to really involve community in the resettlement process itself. And so the co-sponsorship model pairs, as I mentioned earlier, groups of people with a family or an individual and helps deliver some of those core services, and then stays on to, you know, be a friend, as our local office, Sarah mentioned the First Friends program, past the 90-day period. And so we are very busy at the national level developing training material for our co-sponsorship groups and local staff that will be responsible for supervising and managing those groups. So that's one area. And along with that, you know, I was also sharing that we have funding from Open Society Foundations at the moment to design a toolkit that we call the Wider Welcome, which is focused on specifically training around issues of race, racism, anti-racism. And we're excited to make that available not only to the communities where we work, but all resettlement agencies across the US. The toolkit is designed for them. So those are some of, you know, the training gets very specific in terms of delivering R&P services to being a bit more broad. So we also work with all of our affiliate organizations and branch offices to develop each year a community engagement plan. And so in that plan, they come up with ways that they want to have two-way engagement with the community. So that might be through cultural events, it might be through having community dialogues, but we really spend time at the beginning. Each affiliate comes up with a plan. We do a workshop around, you know, introducing new ideas, bringing resources that we have at the national level or examples that we have from our colleagues at national organizations, sharing those with them to incorporate into their plans, and then help implement those plans by providing any training throughout the year as they're offering the different community engagement strategies that they have come up with. So it varies across our network because each community is very different, but we do emphasize giving time at the beginning of each year to developing that plan and thinking through how do we engage communities in this process, not only through co-sponsorship, but through other initiatives. And one area where, you know, continuously thinking about how we can improve is how do we incorporate feedback and have it be a dialogue. So it's not just, you know, one way, but two way. So that's again, an area that ECDC is very excited to be paying attention and focusing time to.
If I may say, Alex, I don't know if in the transportation group, if you have discussed about transportation needs. As we have been talking about, employment is critical, of course, housing is critical, but the issue of transportation is also critical if we want to encourage people to work in the absence, you know, of a dependable public transportation. Then, you know, we have to be creative enough to have alternative, and that alternative may be helping people, you know, with their driver education, driver license, and owning, you know, their private cars, if that is the only alternative that we have available. If people have to work, you know, in either shifts or distance, you know, far away from where they live and so on. So that's something that needs to be also addressed. And I know I have seen in the chat room, also in the discussion about immigrants being entrepreneurs, starting business and so on. But That's something, by the way, we have a great deal of experience in the DC metropolitan area. We have a very successful micro enterprise program. We started it some 20 years ago, knowing that there will be individuals from the refugee community who want to start, their own business as part of self-employment and so on. So we are now basically partnering with the Small Business Administration, the CDFI, and many of the major banks in our area. In a given year, we lent up to $2 million. The maximum amount that we give is $50,000, and it can range, from 500 and above. It is really open. The program is open not only to refugees, but to every low income, moderate income people. And we also use that venue to build, credits. As you know, many of these refugees would be coming with no credit history, and they are coming from societies where borrowing is not really the norm, the tradition. In fact, people who borrow money are looked in a different way. Whereas in the society here, borrowing is encouraged. That's how, your creditworthiness is determined. So in order, to help people, we have done a very successful, credit builders loans. What we do is we give a small amount of money, $500 to $1,000. Then they go into the habit of opening a bank account and then making a monthly payment to establish, their history. So those are the kind of things that once we establish our service, if there is an existing micro enterprise program in the community, that is something that CDC would be willing to look into, of course, with all your support. But there was a question that raised by Diana, and whether to have a group of employees within an employee to be engaged. I think that is something that we would like to really engage. It may be difficult to get 4 or 5 different corporations to come together because of the lack of time and so on. So it may be even much easier for a group of employees within a corporation, a business, to come together and form a group of volunteers to help, new comers. They would be mentoring them and giving them orientation and so on. So that is something that we need really to encourage and look for.
Great. Thank you so much. We just have a few minutes left. There's some great things in the chat. I'll remind folks this is the first conversation, not the last. So if we don't have a chance to speak explicitly to what you're putting in the chat, these are all things we know we're focused on. One thing about transportation is I would be remiss to say so Randy from Southeast Vermont Transit has been on board for the Welcoming Communities Project from the very start. And so that is something that we're really excited to explore and to really support. I think our public transportation system in Southern Vermont is one of the most under-celebrated assets and underused assets we really have. I mean, a public transportation system in Vermont alone is a feat to accomplish, and I think ours is really great. And so thanks, for the participation there, Randy. Sheriff Anderson, you have your hand raised. I'd love to hear, what you'd like to share.
Sure. I know time's brief, so I'm just going to put this out there for awareness. My office currently sponsors what's known as the Hands Teen Driver Safety Program. And basically what it's designed to do is bolt on to the current driver's education system. We have used it in isolated situations with immigrants learning to drive. So adult immigrants learning to drive who were struggling with traditional driver's ed programs. There is state highway safety funding that we could solicit to build out a well thought out program specifically targeting refugee or immigrant population, especially where English as a second language isn't, or I'm sorry, English as a first language isn't necessarily even an option. So just to put that out there, we usually have to apply for the grants about this time of the year. So we would need a little lead time or some support from the State Highway Safety Office to do it outside of a regular cycle.
Great, thanks for sharing that. We have technically 2 minutes left. If there's anything our partners at ECDC or the state, any burning questions we want to end with, now's the time. What I will say is, I'm happy to share that the Welcoming Communities Project was included. Our team, while initially did not receive funding through the challenge, we are lucky to be included in the most recent budget bill. So we do have funding for our Welcoming Communities initiative for 3 years. So when you're asking yourself, well, who's going to be doing the organizing and how is this going to happen and what's going to X, Y, and Z, this is a multi-year process. And I'm going to be waking up every day thinking about those same things, and it'll be my job to help us as a community solve those answers. And again, these consultations will happen quarterly. We'll continue to explore what as a community we are doing well and what we need to work better on. And the only way this will ever succeed is if we are building strong partnerships as we have been. So I'll let ECDC and or Denise say any last few things, but I will put my email and contact information in the chat for anyone with immediate questions. Yeah.
So in terms of time frame, it's my understanding that the proposal to the Department of State by ECDC is due beginning of July, 1st or 2nd of July, I believe. And what happens after that is that the Department of State send a copy of the proposals to the state refugee coordinator in each state of each resettlement agency. And we have, I don't know, maybe a week to give them feedback. So we don't make a decision at the state level, but we do provide feedback on the plan and if we support it and, if there are some issues with it. So it might, I don't know, Zahayi, if you're planning to share the draft plan before you're going to send it to PRM or not. It depends, each resettlement agency is different. But if I get the plan, the proposal at the beginning of July, maybe we can do a call-in or a meeting to discuss and get further feedback from the community before we send our input. As I said, it's quite a short time frame. So if ECDC has a draft before and wants to do it differently, that's great too. Maybe we can, have a peek view at it, even if it's not the official proposal that the Department of State would send us. And the last thing is, yesterday I was on a nationwide phone call with other state coordinators with the Department of State and OR. And PRM mentioned that we asked them when we will know for new sites if they're accepted. And they said that that won't happen before mid-September, probably. So there will be a period where the proposal is submitted and, we can still think about how to get prepared, but we won't know for sure. And that's unfortunately not unusual. And as you know, the federal fiscal year starts in October, on October 1st. So I guess we're expected in 2 weeks to ramp up and do everything, get ready for everything. But I don't know. Also, I think also that in the first few weeks of October, arrivals are very low or none at all, generally in tradition. So Tsehaye.
Yes, thank you for that input, Dennis. Of course, the proposal is due to PRM by July 2nd. And, you know, we have to put together a package for all the affiliates that we have. And I'm not sure, you know, if there will be time really to share a draft with each state refugee coordinator ahead of time. We'll be happy as soon as we submit the proposal, we'll be happy to share, you know, whatever we have submitted. But prior to that, of course, you will have an input into the abstract in terms of the numbers, geographic areas, and so on. Now, what I want also to share, even though officially we will not hear from PRM before mid-September or towards the end of September, our thinking is, you know, if we have the kind of community support that I see in Vermont, and we believe we will submit a convincing proposal, and I am confident that PRM would have no reason to reject our proposal for a new site in Vermont. That's my hope. So hoping that would be the case. The numbers may be something that we will be negotiating. We are proposing 75. PRM may say no, you will take only 25 or 30. Then that's something we'll be negotiating maybe towards the end of September, beginning of October. So in order to really help us, we would like to start as early as possible in terms of setting up our office, and we will need your support. And we would like to hire at least a key staff that is going to do the groundwork for us there. We are looking for a partial financial support from a foundation that has been very keenly interested in us going to Vermont and starting a resettlement. So even though PRM would not fund us, would not tell us until most probably the end of this fiscal year, we are looking for alternative means to help us set up the office, hire, you know, key staff to do the groundwork. Again, you know, I'm looking at it from a very positive and hopeful manner, because the kind of community engagement, support, manifestation that we have seen is very encouraging. And I think that is the kind of thing that PRM wants. And I am positive they would not reject our proposal for a new office in Vermont. For that to happen, I am going to seek your support, letters, emails, and what have you, to PRM, especially since we have, you know, the public officials, both state senators and legislators, representatives. I think your involvement, your input is going to make a difference. We also hope, that's why I asked earlier whether there was anyone from the governor's office. We have approached the governor's office, and there is a positive response. So with all this, armed with all this goodwill, I don't think PRM would have the gut to say no. They will hopefully endorse our application. The numbers, that's something we can negotiate. So with that, I really want to say again how thrilled I am. We were all excited. And thanks, Alex, Adam, Dadis, and all of you. This is really an honor for us to be amongst you. This is very exciting. I have had no such experience in the 30 years that we have done refugee resettlement, where the entire community, including private individuals, public officials, have come together to. This is completely a different experience for me, and I'm excited. We want to make this a demonstration project where other localities, other cities will emulate. And I am very, very grateful, for your showing and interest in the work that we do. We have to compensate, what we have lost during the last 4 years. It has been a very challenging time for all of us. We hope it is behind us, and we look forward to the future. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sahaye. There isn't much I can say better than that. The emphasis on community is what I think we do best, and I think what will help us succeed in this partnership. And on that note, I hope you all have a great day. I'm putting my contact information in the chat. There will be a lot more information, I'm sure, coming quickly. So expect to be dragged into more meetings and invited to opine on all sorts of things in the coming weeks and of course months. So thank you all again so much for being here. And again, any questions or concerns, please send my way.